Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Another exciting show, and let me tell you, another exciting guest. Today we're going to talk with a new word, flow, F-L-O-W, and the concept behind flow. Let me go a little bit deeper than this. Imagine being called a doctor, but not just a doctor, but a doctor of sick corporations or sick management, almost like that TV show where that guy, the restaurant bar saver, where he goes like, get rid of all this stuff, get rid of it. This young man has definitely taken the flow and empowering beast mindsets and organizations to say, look, this is where you need to go to create flow in your organization, in your life, and in your mindset. That's welcome to the show. Let me make sure I get this right. Dr. Kevin Gazzara. Did I get the last name right?
Absolutely, Andre. Thank you so much.
Wow, that's a first for me. You know that, right? Because everybody has such unique names that it's so hard to get the grammar correct.
Yeah, Kevin works just fine for me. I'm pretty informal about that. And I have to tell you, I've never had the work that I've done compared to the bar rescue.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna sit here and tell them why it should be compared to the bar rescue. Before we get started, Kevin, tell the viewers a little bit about who you are.
Well, let's see. I am born and raised in Philadelphia. Did all my undergraduate work in engineering and business, then went off and did an MBA, and ultimately did all my doctoral work and all my research in organizational leadership, and with a focus on flow, which obviously we're going to talk about today. I spent about 30 years in the corporate world. My last 18 years there, I spent at Intel, and the last 10 I managed Intel University and Intel's management leadership development programs for the world. We used to do 2,500 managers and leaders in 10 different countries every year. And when I retired in 2008 to start my firm with two of my colleagues from Intel, Magna Leadership Solutions, we had just finished training our 40,000th manager. So I got pretty good at that. I had a lot of passion for it. But ultimately, I had a goal to retire at 50, which I was able to do. And then I really wanted to go and work with, smaller organizations, that didn't have $10 million budgets, and really help them develop their leaders so that they could be successful. And that's what we've been doing for almost 20 years. And every year has been better than the last. So I have no complaints whatsoever.
When you retire at 52, and I usually tell people that most people who work for a company followed a set pattern that the company instilled for their success. Evidently, you saw a flaw where you was at to create flow. Am I correct on this, or am I just hypothetically speaking?
No, you are right on the money. It was, I saw this pattern. I am very much of a systems thinker, and anyone that has ever studied systems thinking, and if the listeners haven't read the book, The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge, where they talk about systems thinking, I highly recommend you to do that. But there were four of us at Intel that got trained by Peter and his organizations and certified to teach systems thinking. And it's really looking for patterns that aren't immediately visible to everyone else. Once you get trained in this, it's amazing what shows up. And And that's really what drove me to do the deeper dive into flow, because what I recognized is, there are I had a big staff of about 20 people at the time, all very, very similar backgrounds, behaviors, degrees, experience, and they were all doing similar kind of stuff, one of the people would say to me, boy, I love doing A, but I hate doing B. And then the other person would say, I love doing B, but I hate doing A. Next person would say, I love doing C, but I don't like A and B. And I'm thinking, these are all the same people, same backgrounds. Like, what the hell is this? And so when I was working on my doctoral program, you have to come up with a thesis proposal, for your dissertation. And I said, hey, I want to try to figure out what the hell's going on here, because I think the world needs a tool in order to figure out how do you place people in positions where, every day is an amazing day, both for them and for the organization. And I was able to do that.
It's so funny that you was able to come on the show and talk about this. It's almost like what I call the matrix syndrome, where people go to school and they really don't know what they want to do. Because let's get real, we have people that go to college to get a degree here and they wind up going way out of their field, and then they somehow are simulate into a work environment that really was never tailored to them. So now it becomes what the word is, work. When you was with the company, let's use it as an example, you saw A, B, C, all these different people following what I might call a robotic matrix system. You saw something that was truly wrong with that. Were you feeling yourself falling into that same category as well? And if so, what pulled you out?
Well, I read the book. So the book Flow by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I'm not going to spell that for you.
Right.
If you Google Flow, you'll be able to find it. It was written in 1990, and one of my friends gave it to me, I think around 95. He said, you got to read this book. And I read the book, and it was truly, truly life-changing. And we'll talk a little bit about it today, but I encourage everybody to read it. And what it basically said was that you can create this environment, and most people know about flow, they just don't know about the term. In the 90s, it was retermed as being in the zone. So people, oh yeah, I know about that, right? So getting into the zone or being into the zone, and that's really flow. And once I read that, I could restructure my days and my activities and my interests to keep me in flow as much as possible. Because the key with flow is once you are in flow, doesn't necessarily guarantee productivity, but that's where all your creative juices just explode, right? And once you found that, and I would tell anybody, everybody's been in flow in one way or another, right? Good example is you're working on something, whether it's on the computer or woodworking or cycling or running, whatever it is, and you look at your watch or you look up at the clock and it's like 3 hours later than you believe it is. That is flow. That's one of the biggest indicators where that sense of time gets incredibly distorted. And what I noticed was, a lot of my people were watching the clock, and they're looking up at the clock and they think it's 12 o'clock and it's really still 11:10. Like, oh my God, and you think, boy, I just worked for an hour, and they look up and it's been 10 minutes and they're just not in the zone. So when I found I was doing that, I knew I was working on activities that weren't in flow. And we're going to talk about how do you get there.
Kevin, what was your occupation? So the viewers can get an idea of, like, if you was a construction worker, it's one thing. If you are a restaurant owner, that's one thing. But what was your occupation? What was your job title? And what did you have to do?
So I've had many job titles. When I first got out of school with my undergraduate, I was a customer marketing engineer. So dealing with heavy equipment, not high tech, those kind of things. I moved into product management. Ultimately, I was an operations manager, and then I was a general manager for a small division. when I moved to Intel, I took a position at Intel in 1989. I started it over again. I started back as a marketing engineer, then a product manager, then a operations, and then a GM. But ultimately, what I found is that as part of the things that you do at Intel, when you get to a certain level, there's an expectation that you teach about 40 hours a year of different programs. What I found is I really love teaching, and Intel gives you a sabbatical every 7 years. Every 7 years, you get to disconnect for 2 months, leave your computer, your phone, everything there, and you get to go off and recharge. And usually when you come back, there's an opportunity to go do something different. And when I came back, the guy that was running Intel University for the world said, "Hey, I noticed you like doing this kind of stuff. You get really good scores. You seem to be passionate about it. Would you be interested to come over to the dark side from, the engineering tech world over to HR to do that?" Yeah. And I said, "Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity." So I did that, and then basically the rest of my life and career has moved on from that point. And it was right in the time when I read Flow on my sabbatical, recognizing that there's probably some other opportunities, and you get a message from God or whatever it comes from, of like, "Hey, here's an opportunity. You know what? This follows right along the Flow book, so let's give it a try."
That's what I was getting ready to say, because a lot of people go through these different trials with careers. You seem to do that, but somehow or another, you went back to the same career again, and then found that one thing that was, let's call it what it is, it might have been out of the norm for you. So what do you think really gravitated you to that? Was it the fact that you was literally getting out of the flow where you were? Let me put it like this. The other careers prior to that one, were you ever in the flow, or did you even have somewhat of a concept what was going on? You knew you was almost defragmented, so to speak. That wasn't for you, because you went back there several times in some way, shape, form, or fashion. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I think in my original job, my first 10 years of life out of school, I certainly there were opportunities for flow, but it wasn't extreme. And the main reason I made the change, Andre, was that I was working in heavy equipment, steam turbines, compressors, custom kind of stuff. It was really interesting from a tech perspective. But during the 80s, when the personal computer came in play and video started to take hold, that I found that I loved doing video, producing video, writing videos, teaching using videos, and learning about the personal computer. And I was working in a very old line industry. And magically, what happened was Intel bought the digital video technology from RCA Labs and General Electric in 1988, and they needed someone that was had an MBA, engineering undergrad, had done video, had done new computers, and it was like they wrote this ad for me. So I'll tell you 1 minute crazy story.
Go ahead.
Is when I saw the ad, I had been working for a manager that was the worst micromanager. And I came home one day and said to my wife, after working for this guy for 9 months, "I just can't deal with it anymore." She says, "Okay, go find a job." So back then, you used to have to open up the newspaper.
Right.
I opened up the newspaper, and there's this ad for Intel. And I knew some people that were at Intel, and they basically said, "Great company, innovative." So Monday morning, I went to my secretary, used to call them secretaries back then, administrative assistant, said, "Book me on a flight to San Francisco the end of the week. Don't book an open, don't give me a return," because we had distributors in San Francisco.
Right.
So I flew out there, landed in San Francisco, picked up the phone, called the recruiter that was in Santa Clara, and said, "Hey, I'm here to interview for this product manager job." I said, "I know you're going to get 1,000 resumes for this. I am the right guy. And if you don't interview me, I'm going to come and sit in your lobby." So I
Kevin,
think
you was at Sure, right?
I knew like I am the right person. So I went down, and he was good enough. And I still remember his name, Rick Braun. So Rick says, okay, 4 o'clock, you're on, meet me in the cafeteria.
Right.
So I drove down, worst interview of my life. Couldn't have gone worse because he had only hired chip designers. So he
Right.
never hired for this position. And I left that and I felt really dejected. Like, oh, this was a mistake.
Right.
But what he did do is he picked up the phone and he called the general manager in Princeton. It's like, there's a guy that lives there, but he flew here because I was living right outside of Princeton at the time.
Right.
I didn't pay for him. He was all frantic because like they thought I might have paid for me. And he read me the resume and all the stuff. And apparently the general manager reinbounced like, yeah, of course, that's the guy we want. He's got everything in the ad. Have you read the ad?
Right.
So I, fortunately they called me back and said, hey, come into Princeton and interview here. And I interviewed, and I think eventually they just gave me a position because so they could get work done and me stop bothering them.
When you look back at this, because I'm taking the viewers down a breadcrumb here.
Okay.
You had a one-way ticket with a no return stamped on it. Right. To show you the power of that beast mindset that you had. You wasn't cool with where it was at because you didn't get along with the boss there, the micromanager. Right. You knew you didn't want to be micromanaged. You wanted to, what's the word I want to use here?
Well, I wanted to let my creative ideas explode, to expand.
What do you think went wrong because you said, damn, I screwed that up. I know I screwed it up. Were you in the land of overconfidence?
No, I didn't really think that I screwed it up. What I recognized is the recruiter had only hired, they were looking for a product manager.
Right.
And this guy had only hired people that did chip design, like completely unrelated, because when Intel bought the digital video technology from RCA, this was completely new to them. They had never been in this space before.
Right.
So they just used one of the normal recruiters that does all the other hiring for the chip designers to like, well, you're a recruiter, just interview him. So he only knew how to ask questions about chip design. Now, fortunately, in my undergraduate work, I had done digital video design and so forth. So I knew enough about it, but I had spent 10 years in a non high tech industry. So right. So he couldn't get by that perspective.
So when you wind up getting a position, did you still see the same things that you saw at the other job? The flow, there was no flow. Did you still see the matrix type environment there? Even though that's what you wanted to do, let's get real. If you're not confident, if you're not conscious of what's going on, you evolved in your way of thinking. You know what I mean? But now you're in a new environment. Did you see some of the same setups or let me not call it setup. Did you see the same type of environmental habits being performed where you was at, even though it was a new job?
No, right. And I think the big difference was, particularly in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, being fortunate to be in the Silicon Valley world, right, of high tech, everything was moving so quickly the average age, I think, was about 26 at the time. Mm-hmm. The company I left, I think the average age was about 66. So I was the new guy. I was the new guy there. So moving into an environment that was closer to my age, where I wasn't the young guy, was very, very creative and aggressive. So I didn't see, Intel's a very innovative company, wonderful company to work for. I got so much great experience. I have no regrets whatsoever, but I didn't see what I saw in an old industrial. I mean, the company I worked for was 100 years old.
Right.
They've been in business 100 years. They're very successful, but it was very much a command and control kind of environment. Most of the managements were like Navy captains, right? So very militaristic environment. What I found out the people in Intel was, best and the brightest, but they came from a very different perspectives.
How did you wind up? What was the final straw that made you decide to create your own system, the flow system?
So I did not create the flow system. What I did do was the flow system was actually created by Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
Okay.
Just a wonderful gentleman. He passed away last year, so we big loss to the world, but he did a lot of amazing work, and I was fortunate enough to have him as an advisor for the doctoral work that I had done. Mm-hmm. But my hypothesis, Andre, was that, looking at all these challenged individuals that I had that were working for me, and people I was working with also in other organizations, what I recognized was the system I wanted to create. I wanted to see if I could enhance or replicate flow with a new model. Mm-hmm. And that's what Dr. Mihai had worked with me on. But here's my hypothesis was that there are three types of tasks we all do. There's some good research on this that was done by a gentleman by the name of William Daniels. What Bill had done was he said we do routine tasks, we do troubleshooting tasks, and we do project tasks. And everything that we do would fall into those three categories. And my hypothesis that I had proposed for the dissertation was that each one of us there's 496 discrete mixtures of that, right? And we each have one of those. And if I can determine what your mixture is, I'll give you mine on a high level. I like 50% project work, like about 30% problem solving, troubleshooting, and I like to do about 20% routine work. Mm-hmm. And if I can create that environment, even if it's like total crap work that I have to do, right, I know that I'll have a higher degree of job satisfaction and motivation. And what we found is the system works very well with flow, but it didn't create a new variable for flow. But the two work together. So if I can get the right kind of tasks, the right mixture, and you can go into flow, and flow from a very simple perspective is when you have the right level of challenge and the right level of skill, then you get into flow. If the challenge is too high, you get into anxiety. And if the challenge is too low, you go into boredom. And the key is to find that fine line between the two so that you can develop flow, because that's where the creativity happens.
And you know what? That creates great opportunities for people who really don't know what they want to do. That's brilliant when you think about it, because if you got the data in front of you on what I do best and what I like best, then you have an idea of what career path I'm going to probably excel in.
Yeah, and what I've done, what I do with my coaching clients in particular, is the first thing I have them do is I have them, plot their average week or weeks, right? And I have them plot this, and I don't tell them this is the flow diagram. Just have them plot it, and then you overlay the center line, which is the flow area, and it shows them what's motivating and what's demotivating for them. And I really took it to another level, like when I was at Intel, when I was managing teams, when we get new projects or new activities coming in, rather than saying who has time available or whatever, we would put up the flow diagram, because I had all my staff plotted their flow, so I knew what I needed to give them more of and less of. And when the new project came out, somebody saying, yeah, I've got a ton of experience, I could do this, but this is going to put me in the boredom category. It's not very challenging. So we tried to match everything to individuals so that they would be motivated and engaged. And it wasn't just about efficiency. It's like one person could have done it in a project in 40 hours. The other person, it might be 60. But the one that's in 40 hours and it's dreadfully boring for them, I know I'm not going to get the creativity out of them. But the person that's going to take a little bit longer and they're going to thrive and eat it up and just want to do more and more of it, right? That's the person to give it to. So you might have to sacrifice a little productivity, but you never sacrificed creativity.
This I'm gonna try to articulate this the best way I can. By having people in these three different categories, does that create a ripple effect to some degree, to where you're always going to have an overachiever in one of these areas? Does that make any sense?
Well, there's two areas we're talking about. There's the tasks, and that's one thing. You want to try to balance a task. So, like, obviously, tasks that are in the boredom area, you want to get rid of, right? Whether it's routine troubleshooting or project work. Mm-hmm. And ones that are in the anxiety area, you want to either move down in the flow, get more training, or lower the challenge. So that's the task piece. But in the four categories, in the categories of anxiety, flow, and boredom, which I think is the one you're mentioning. Mm-hmm. Yes, the key is once you know where you are, and as a manager, once I know where I'm going to put a person, it mm-hmm. completely changes how I grow and develop and how I produce for the company. Super easy. Free to do, doesn't take, you don't have to be, you don't have to have a PhD in organizational psychology to do this. I've done this done this with executive teams. Mm-hmm. They're working on $1 billion companies. Mm-hmm. We've done it at a nursing home in Maine of the kitchen staff, right? And we plotted that. In fact, when we did it, the guy that I worked with did it, plotted it and said, this is all wrong. Like, everybody's happy. This can't be. How can you be working in a kitchen in a nursing home and like your job? And when mm-hmm. we went back and interviewed them, we said, hey, and we showed them kind of being in the flow. They said, yeah, absolutely. And the reason was the management gave them the flexibility. So the person doing dishes also magically was great as an electrician. So when stuff broke, he got to work on that. The mm-hmm. person that was doing the serving also was really personable. So they put them outside. So what they said was, because most of them had been in the jobs for 8 to 15 years. And you think, right. That's like a starter job where you wouldn't want to do that. But what we found is even though they had the job, quote, as the dishwasher, as the cook, whatever, because the manager gave them opportunity to use their talents all of the time, and they were in control of that, that they stayed in flow, and the turnover was close to zero.
So you find out that creating a flow type method, allowing individuals to experience other things that, even though they may be challenged, can also help to elevate their mind. I was getting ready to say that. So where does the mental aspect come? Because you can have CEOs and chairmen that are non-verbal, non-confrontational. They're in their zone, and their flow may be, I just want to do this. But their job title is you a CEO. Right. You have to go to board meetings. You know what I mean? How do you incorporate the psychological aspect into this?
Well, we do everything in a team environment. So when we recognize that, because not everybody's good at everything, and there's very few people that are good at everything. What we want to do is you want to amplify your strengths. You want to get your weaknesses to a baseline, but we don't want you to spend if you're like terrible negotiator, right? We want to get you to where you can have a reasonable conversation negotiation, but we're not going to get you so you're the best negotiator in the world. Right. We want you to partner with people, right? So what you do is you set up this team environment. So in a CEO situation, because we work with that a lot, mm-hmm. is what are the kind of things you're going to experience? Negotiations, conflict, project management. I mean, there's like a dozen things that CEOs have to deal with, budgeting, kind of so forth. Is we need to identify who the experts are there, who those topics get into flow with, mm-hmm. right? And when it comes up, you need to take a servant leadership approach rather than an authoritarian leader approach, and say, hey, guess what? Joe is the best at this. He's going to address this question. Lisa's the best at this. She's going to address this question. And really act, and the CEO act as more of a facilitator, more so than a controller of everything. Doesn't mean they still don't maintain control of it, but they're really leveraging. So the people that are doing the stuff that's in their flow,
Right.
they are passionate about it. They're creative about it. They do it naturally.
Right.
The CEO is going to learn from them, but any leader that thinks they have to do it all
Right.
is just doomed for success, doomed for catastrophe.
You sound like you quoting from the movie Wall Street. I'm talking about Wall Street, where he got out of jail and they were all in the boardroom. The young his son-in-law, and you had the head honcho guy that was like giving order, but you had this young guy, his soon-to-be son-in-law was just like, "Hey, we need to get into nuclear fusion, blah blah blah." And you seen all these creative different mindsets here, but like you said, you saw the one dude was just knocking everything down that he said. So my question with that is, which one of the categories is more difficult to really navigate and to lift up, and which one is like what we might call the dream person that you say, I can really take this person to a next level?
I think it comes down to something incredibly simple. Is the best people to coach, the people that are going to become the most spectacular leaders, all have the same singular quality: is they're wonderful listeners, and they're open to take input and apply it. That's it. Like if you can listen to the experts, because by the way, you may be the CEO, but you're not the expert in finance, and you're not the expert in production optimization. If you're willing to really listen, to be able to synthesize it and apply it, you can be successful. You don't have to be the most brilliant guy. I mean, I think there's a movie, right? The smartest guys in the room from Enron, right? Yeah. That's the way not to manage, right? That's the playbook of how do you want to screw up a company. But if you're truly listening, and you're listening from a perspective to learn and grow, not you're listening from a perspective to be confrontational, right? And the way people will know if you're truly listening is that if you're because our brains are set up to do serial processing. Most people think we can parallel process, do multitasking. Our brains can't do that, right? We're just not wired for that. But if you have someone, and you can test this on yourself, if you're listening for understanding, you're not processing a response. And what I found is a lot of the CEOs or the executives have the biggest problem is that as they're listening to me or someone else trying to develop we're working on some type of behavior or skill, if they're processing how I'm going to respond to that, then they've stopped listening. Right. So you can usually catch them, or if you watch their eyes, you usually will lift their eyes up or move in one direction or another. You know that they're off thinking about, like, well, Kevin's saying this, and I don't agree with that, and I should be like, and you have to
they're in the creative side, a mindset.
Yeah, and we want them to be in the creative side, but we also want them to be in the listening mode, so that they can absorb it, right, rather than thinking they know it all.
Is there a difference in delivering this technology to men and women? Is there a difference?
There is not. We found when I did all my doctoral research there was no difference whatsoever with the scores of men or women. There was no difference with your scores with regard to education, right? Like I said, we did it in a nursing home to a CEO level, right? That this applies to all of them. Women and men can both be equally as successful in the roles, and it's much more with regard to personality than gender.
Wow. Why is this method not incorporated into a larger sector? Because let's get real. I probably interviewed so many people, and even as a fitness trainer, the number one thing I hear from people is, "I hate my job." I say, well, "Why are you there?" Money.
Yeah.
And another reason is fear. They're afraid to, and these are some powerful people that I run into, and I'm like, you afraid to step out of something you don't like just to get a check? And I say, well, what if the company closed? I said, what if the company closed that you work for today? How would you navigate? And you know what they would tell me? I don't know.
Right. Yeah, and I do a lot of coaching with people that have been downsized, right-sized, whatever you want to call them, unemployed, laid off, and most of them have not. They don't have a plan, right? Because the pain of staying where they are hasn't exceeded the pain of change, right? And
go deeper with that. Go deeper with that, Kevin, because that sounded so good.
Well, I'm going to use my example with my first general manager, that boss that I had. That I came. I remember the Friday I came home and told my wife, that I don't care what the pain is for me to change, whether it's money, whether it's position, whether it's and Intel was. I mean, I was a senior marketing sales manager. And I went back at Intel. I went back to being an individual contributor, customer marketing engineer, right back to the same position I started in the other company, different industry. And the thing I told Intel was, I said, whatever salary, I said, I know I have this. I'm managing a big organization. I know I'm going to have to step back. I said to them, whatever salary you offer me, I will accept it. I don't care if it's half the salary, a third of the salary, it doesn't matter. Like this is my passion. This is where I want to go. And when my offer letter came in February, I opened it up and they offered me 8% more than I was making.
Wow.
I called the manager and I said, "Hey, Dave, I think there's a mistake here. Like you're offering me a senior management position level salary, not an entry level." And he says, no, the Intel philosophy is we're going to hire you for what we think you're going to be able to do, not for where we're bringing you in. He said, wow. But there's going to be a lot of pressure for you to get there, just so you understand. And that's when I knew I was working for a great company.
I'm glad you came on the show to clarify that using yourself, because a lot of people need to realize, if I own a company or I'm starting a company, I'm not looking at what you can do now more so than what I'm a 5-year guy. Like, where do I see myself 5 years? Because I know I'm going to have bumps and stuff. And then I'm going to look at you and say, can this guy be valuable 5 years? Can this guy be valuable 10 years? And more importantly, value means, what ideas can he bring to amplify what I'm trying to create?
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about is you're hiring for talent and you're going to train for skill.
Boom.
Yeah, right. And that's always been a philosophy of mine. Is like you said, is I want to know what their potential is.
Yeah.
Right. And if I can hire them there, it's got to be a good career for them. And by the way, it's probably a great thing for the company. But if you're hiring them to just excel at what they're doing and you don't see that potential, I think that's very, very short-term vantage point.
Let's just, before you wrap up, let's go deeper than this. Let's talk about the economy here. Let's talk about the workforce.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the state of economy, the state of emergency, and let's talk about the state of, how do I want to say this without making people upset? Nobody wants to do anything anymore. Does that make any sense? People, let me go here so it make a little bit more sense. We see more turnovers in the workforce, even at such jobs as McDonald's. You know, McDonald's was my first major job outside of delivering papers. And I was funny because I was at McDonald's saying, man, they lost this is what I said. Seriously, I got a fish sandwich. The fries were watered down. They wasn't hot. And I was like, I remember my first job at McDonald's, we was deep into quality and customer service. You didn't keep food in a bin, no more than so many sandwiches. Now it's like, what happened? You're an expert. I'm going to call you an expert. What happened? Yeah. What happened?
So I think, being a systems thinker, one of the things that I found is, and I've heard that complaint from many of the organizations and managers I've worked with, and what I found is that it's not that has changed. What has changed is we haven't put the systems that encourage and excite the new workers in place. It's always a systems problem, right? So the old line system is production, train for skill, let them do that entry level stuff 1,000 times, and then give them more responsibility. Mm-hmm. What we really need is to change the system, and today's system, for those listening, is one, you want to get first of all, it has to be human. The human piece is the most, as we've moved into the world of AI and technology, that's starting to diminish, right? The first thing is you have to bring the people in as humans. So you have to relate to them. You have to listen to them and realize also, because of the kind of the work economy, and this, what I would call portfolio economy, where there's lots of things going on, is that, it needs to be a holistic approach. It's not, you leave work at 5 o'clock and everything goes away. It's more engaged. So you have to be human. You have to get people in flow. You have to develop them, and you have to show them a path forward, so that you don't get that situation where they've learned how to do all the fries and the fish fillets and everything, and really and understand the systems. And the next thing okay, you're really good at that. We're going to let you do that for another 7 years. You can't do that anymore. You have to have this fluid system. And my position has always been with my staff is that I don't want you working for me 18 months from now. I want you to either take a higher level position or a different level lateral position in 18 months. I need to think about that on day one. Mm-hmm. And I don't think many organizations, or very, very few organizations, do that. And if you can do that, and you can show that interest, where they are truly valuable, mm-hmm. HR says, the humans are the most valuable portion. Right. That's a big sign. Right. I don't see that in many organizations.
It is so funny that you said these things. I'm gonna use a prime example. I had to throw them up under the bus. We have a franchise in the Midwest called Kroger's, and I've never called on a company that I can recall. I got so livid at this one particular Kroger's because nobody was ever there at the customer service desk for a simple money order. I remember I said, well, I'm sitting there standing, and I'm like, I see people walking around, and I said, well, is anybody, and they see me now. I was like, is anybody coming? They're on their break. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. Who's on a break? So, I got tolerance. I have tolerance. So this became repetitive as I'm going into this store. But then I look at the other Kroger's, like where I live in Westfield and Carmel, a whole different environment. It's kind of like, how you doing? The store's clean, it's organized. Everything that they have is neatly displayed. People are greeting you. And then it dawned on me, okay, Dre, put yourself in the mode that you're in, Kevin. What's missing here? Lack of management is what is coming to my mind, because I call Kroger's, whoever their customer people, I say, hey, do you guys not go and check your other stores? Because you're supposed to be a level of, if I see the level of quality in my neighborhood and I travel outside of my neighborhood, but your stores still carry the same brand, who's supervising the stores here? Because these workers act like that they hate to be there.
Yeah. Well, and you've brought up a great point is, to establish a really strong brand, you have to have consistency, right? That I need, and I mean, that's one of the things that McDonald's has done, right? And they recognize that really, really early on, that you have to have that level of consistency, and they put the right systems in place to make sure that happens. Obviously, your experience with Kroger has shown that the systems are in place and they're not being reinforced, or the systems aren't in place. But it's not about changing the employees' behavior and bringing them all in and saying you need to be happier and more available and so forth. You need to reinforce that, but there's something in the system that's driving that behavior away. And what it usually is, particularly for people that work for a manager and not a leader, the managers say, hey, if I can not keep him behind the desk for an hour, that's an hour they can do more shelf stocking, and that's an hour less I have to pay. That's very short-term thinking, and that's a manager's thinking. A leader's thinking is, hey, customer satisfaction first, because that maintains the longevity. And by the way, short term, I may take a hit. My margins might not be as good as the other store, but guess what? I'm going to continue to grow. And if you did customer satisfaction scores, Kroger, the first Kroger store we talked about, is going to come in at 8 to 10, and they're going to come in at 5 to 6. That's the other portion of the system. You have to have the quality piece of the system in addition to the quantity piece. And too often, particularly in the world of venture capital, we used to call them vulture capitalists.
Right.
In that world, it's just numbers, and it's not humans, and it's not longevity. And the things, the stuff that I invest in are the people that are taking the long term. I'm okay for them to take short term hits, right? But I want to know that they're growing in a bigger way.
Now, before we wrap up, your organization and your methods you now incorporated them into helping smaller companies develop, almost like I just said, the restaurant bar.
Yeah.
But only your picture is a lot longer. You're trying to keep them in business for a lot longer and believing in themselves. What type of companies would be best suited for you?
Thanks for the question. We work with all different size companies. We primarily work with smaller to medium sized companies. It seems to be 300 to 1,500 people seem to be a sweet spot for us. But we also work with companies. We have several companies that have over 100,000 people. The difference is it's usually a department. Like we work with a purchasing department or supply chain department or whatever that's having challenges. A department of 100 people or 200 people, whatever. But we work with larger corporations, but not at a global level. We don't do the big global stuff. That's just too much overhead. Trying to change. We're not going to change 100,000 person organizations. So smaller organizations, people that want to take the long-term view, particularly most of the time we get called in is when the pain of change is less painful than the current pain, and it's usually when you have the turnover is really high. Yeah, that they can't get enough people, they can't keep enough people, they can't get them productive, they can't get them creative, and usually what happens is the companies wait a little bit too long,
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more difficult, but that's usually a good lagging indicator that there's a problem. We love to work with those companies
Right.
because we can help make them profitable and engaging. And many of the organizations we work on where they've had 20, 30, 40% turnover, we've been able to get it down into single digits. We even had one a big success story that we got it to zero. I'm not going to guarantee to zero, but it's if you have that kind of turnover and you're
Right.
spending all your time on hiring and rehiring and
Right.
retraining, oh man, you are wasting a lot of money.
Wow. And I encourage people to reach out to you. This is a system that, to me, I'm going to call it what it is. It's a beast-minded system for success. And any entrepreneur that wants to be successful, he or she doesn't want to become an entrepreneur to fall. I would call this the first line in opening your doors, evaluating your employees, putting a beast-minded system together. That way you already ahead of the game instead of being like on the bar thing. And wait till the rats and the roaches and all that stuff come tumbling in. Kevin, how can the viewers reach out to you to get more about your company? And then number two, is this a universal service? Like it's not just US based. You cover everybody, correct?
We've done these programs all around the world. Yeah, and we did one recently in Shanghai and Tokyo and Amsterdam, Bulgaria. Done them all around the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. Those kind of So
Wow.
it goes beyond culture. So, but Andre, one of the things I do want to do, because I know we're getting close on the time, is I want to give the listeners a gift.
Give it to
Right?
them.
Yeah. So if you'd like to know kind of what your ideal balance is, I've created a link for you. And if you wanted to figure out, so what would be an ideal job of how the kind of jobs I should be looking for with regard to project routine and troubleshooting.
Right.
If you go to magnaleader, MAGNA leader.co.com / and then all caps GIFT. You'll be able to take the assessment, which we usually charge for. You'll be able to take it for free as my gift.
Wow. Thank you so much. Man, did you guys hear that? That's one thing about this platform, the I Am Beast and Andre The Beast Crayton Show. We provide resources, education, and not just that beast mindset. I want you guys to click on that because that's a tool that is that's like a gold mine. I would love to know what my scores is, especially college kids.
Yes.
And high school kids that's trying to figure out what to get into. Now he's giving you a resource at no cost. That's great.
And if you're looking for a job, knowing those percentages ahead of time allow you to interview the interviewer. Right. So if you have a high project need, you can ask some questions about, tell me what a normal day looks like. And it's like, okay, well, you have to, there's about 3 hours of putting this data in and 4 hours of putting this data in.
Right.
And if you hear like it's 80% routine work, even though it may be a good job financially, ultimately you're going to be bored to death.
Yeah.
And you're going to be looking for something else. So let it help you interview the interviewer.
Wow, Kevin, thanks so much. How can the viewers reach out to you? Is there a phone number, website?
Yeah. So if anyone wants to talk to me, Kevin at magnaleadership.com, MAGNA, magnaleadership.com. You can get a hold of me. That's probably the best way.
Okay.
You can go to our website at magnaleadership.com. Probably the best way. The thing I will promise anyone that connects with me, if you want to have a discussion about this, you'll get absolutely no sales pitch. I don't do sales pitches. I'm not going to try to sell you to buy our coaching or consulting. If I can help you, fantastic. Right? I can usually give you a couple of really good ideas to help get you over that hump. And if you want to work after that, great, we can have a discussion, but most of 90% of our stuff all comes from referrals.
Right.
If I can be helpful, that's that's kind of my purpose in life is to just help others.
Kevin, thank you so much for taking time out to share your resource, your knowledge, and your beautiful story of resilience, that beast mindset. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you subscribe, click follow. Make sure you share this information with somebody, because sometimes it takes one click of a button to make a difference in your life or somebody else's. This has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.